Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Patty Giarrusso, and this is Let's Talk Pets on Society Bites Radio. Today, I welcome to the show Lisa Chittaro, an attorney from Sarasota, Florida. Lisa is a former state attorney who has practiced animal and elder abuse cases from 2013 to 2017. She's currently in private practice in Sarasota, and she believes that her work focuses on specific cases that otherwise wouldn't receive the awareness that they should. And thanks to her work, these cases have been aggressively prosecuted and investigated. Lisa believes that both animals and the elderly are members of society that need the most protection, and she's been instrumental in prosecuting local abuse cases in our two counties here, Manatee and Sarasota, and her tireless efforts have brought these animal cruelty cases and helped these voiceless victims get the recognition, I guess, that they should get. And, it's really important to her that she remains so active in our animal welfare issues in our community because they're so important to her. So welcome to the show, Lisa.
Thanks, Patty. Thanks for the great introduction, and thanks for having me.
You're welcome. I wanted to talk with you because, animal cruelty and neglect and abuse is I don't know, something sadly that happens across the country. But also animal theft cases seem to be on the rise. And I've recognized them here to be on the rise with my work, working with lost pets. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that and, kind of let people know that those that don't believe that pets are property, that they really are property, and it is considered theft if you keep someone's property.
That's absolutely true. I follow your page quite a bit, and I've had numerous conversations with people in the community when I was a prosecutor in private practice and with law enforcement regarding that exact issue, is that pet theft is something real that's happening in our community. And especially in the civil area, which could be criminal or civil, pets are considered to be kind of a quasi-property. Whoever has possession of the pet, ownership, custody, that's the person in control and has the authority over the pet. If you unlawfully dispossess someone of their property, which is theft, you've committed the crime of theft, which could also be, civil conversion. So you could have a civil and or a criminal remedy.
Yeah, and a lot of times, people, they don't believe it. And I think one of the problems that I hear sometimes is people will say, oh, I was told it's a civil matter, and then they just kind of let it go. But it's worth fighting for, and that's kind of what I wanted you to, talk about the steps that if somebody's pet was stolen, how do they go about, what should they do if they don't have somebody guiding them? I try to guide people if that happens, but if they don't have anybody guiding them, what would you offer them as advice?
Well, the first circumstance that would happen is that someone no longer has their pet. So it would be, is the pet lost or stolen? What are the circumstances for that? And your page is great for that. I watch it all the time, and we've had notice you've had a very high success rate of reuniting pets with their owners. So it's a great service you're providing to the community. But if someone knows that their pet was stolen, it was taken without their permission, or if they had someone watch their pet for, say, a short time, and then it's, no, you can't have your dog back, is that something that should be reported to law enforcement? And that report should put in there, if they didn't have permission, proof that the animal belongs to you, either vet records or wherever you adopted the animal, pictures, anything to show that pet that you are the lawful owner of that pet. And then whoever it is that has your pet unlawfully is to say what attempts you've made, if any, to get the pet back and their refusal to do it.
Now, why do you think that when people call to make a report, they're sometimes told it isn't theft, it's a civil matter? Now, what would be the distinction between that, and why are they told that, do you think?
Well, that would be, and I presume you're talking about reporting that to law enforcement?
Yeah.
I'm not going to, second guess or comment on whatever the law enforcement policies are, but it's like, your own health. You're the best advocate. If you're not feeling well and the doctor says, well, you're fine, well, you don't feel well, you need to be the advocate for, no, you're not feeling well. It's the same, it's akin to that analogy, is you have to be your own advocate.
Right.
And a lot of times there's so many calls that come into law enforcement for various things that are emotional, spontaneous in nature, and law enforcement does their best to weed through and direct their resources where they need to go investigative-wise. When I was prosecuting animal cases, that did come up from time to time, and it does require some investigation to determine whether or not it is just a civil matter or it does need to be pursued criminally. So it's an investigation that needs to usually take place. It's depending on it's providing the right information on the theft statute, which is the unlawful, temporary or permanently depriving someone of their property, is the statutory language. And sometimes you just need to go a little bit further than the front desk person. And you can always, I think most of our local law enforcement agencies, you can go and write an actual report out and follow through on it and see what's being done.
Yeah, I guess what I was getting at was what would be the distinction between, now we know theft is theft, and so what is a civil matter? What does that mean when what constitutes that versus the theft? Just maybe fighting over custody of the pet, like somebody broke up, oh, that's mine, that's yours. I don't know. Is that what the difference would be? Because people ask me and I'm not really sure how to answer that.
That's a good example, and that's what I was thinking of before you brought it up, is oftentimes when there's a breakup and there's a joint ownership of a pet, say in a divorce, both parties are saying, it's mine, and one of the husband or wife will call law enforcement and say, that's my dog, I want that dog back. At that point, that would be a civil matter properly held in family law court through the divorce proceeding, and if they're not married, then it would be a civil action, because both parties, the intention is good. Both parties generally believe they own that dog, and they can no longer jointly cohabitate. So the dog, is going back and forth or needs to be somewhere. The difference in criminal is when there's a criminal intent, that you're taking something does not belong to you.
Yeah.
So that's where an investigation would lead.
Yeah, that's a good example because, people don't understand. And I just wanted to clarify it as well, what constitutes the civil versus the other. And that's a good example because, I've heard somebody say, oh, my ex stole it or whatever. And that does mean it's a civil. Okay. Well, there's so much to it, and I mean, our law enforcement here is really good about it. I talk with Kathy Poblowski from Lost Dogs of America, and she's in Wisconsin, and I guess they don't have as much help as we do here. So we're lucky, we're very lucky, I guess, in that respect. But I think maybe it's because of people like you and the officers that we deal with that really have, such care for the animals and, really want to help them. And I'm not saying that the others don't. I mean, I come from a police family. So even my husband's a cop. So it's not that they don't care, but sometimes they just don't have the time, for cases such as this, I guess. I don't know.
Well, if it is generally a theft, somebody intentionally took someone's dog because they wanted it either for their own benefit or to sell it, which we did see happen a few times as well, that someone was out stealing dogs and then selling them for a profit.
Yeah.
It's an investigation that takes specialized, and you're right about this community, is our community is very well connected, especially with animal issues, is that as large as it is, and I do include Sarasota and Manatee in it, of probably 600,000 people, it is a very well-connected, well-organized communication. And your page and other pages is we see what's going on. And law enforcement typically would also watch those pages.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone became educated. Everyone has a different level of expertise in the area. Like, rescues are very good with caring for homeless animals, finding fosters for them, finding homes, and that they bring a very important component to the equation of the overall animal welfare. Law enforcement has the authority to investigate potential crimes. So with all that communication going on, I've always found, or I've believed, that this community is very well connected because of the tremendous love for animals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so too. It was hard when I first started doing this to get to where I am right now, but I feel like, the people that help me are just amazing. They really, really do care. And it's really important. And I wish it was like that across the country, and maybe it will be someday, but we're lucky here, I think, that we have that. So what other, in your line of work as an attorney, you've dealt with some very bad, I guess, neglect, cruelty, animal abuse cases. And I think one of the things I want to know is people ask me, what do I do if I see a dog? A lot of the time it's just sadly they're outside chained to a tree, all day long. And I don't know if that is, criminal. I know there are the statutes here, but is anything like that ever, what do I want to say? Something that would get as far as, a cruelty case, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
There are ordinances both in Manatee and Sarasota Counties regarding tethering. And tethering is leaving an animal outside unsupervised. Both have language in there of how long you're allowed to do it, the length of the tether, and that sort of thing. In Sarasota, last time I checked, the ordinance did make it a criminal offense.
Okay.
In Manatee County, it's an ordinance. So it would be Animal Services that would respond to that. And Animal Services, they've always done a great job of attending to that animal, especially with the heat that we have out here. And there was some cases that, one case in particular I remember, was that an animal, people didn't have money for a fenced backyard. And so they would tie their dog outside. And the problem and the danger, which became very real to me with that case, is that the dog spun around so much and tried to jump over part of the fence and hung itself.
Oh, no.
And that was looked at, of course, for criminal. Animal Services responded, did what they could, and they did a proper investigation, but that was ultimately didn't file a criminal charge because it was just an unforeseeable consequence. It wasn't intentional. People were leaving the dog out to get some exercise and just didn't take the time or didn't find the resources of just what potentially could happen. And they're animals. They're, as much as we know our pets and think we know them and can predict them, they're very unpredictable. And there are very severe accidents that can happen that can be catastrophic to their lives.
Yeah. I wasn't sure, because I do know for the cases that people have asked me about Manatee that I know Animal Services goes out and they check it right out, and so that's interesting. So in Sarasota, it's different, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I believe it is a criminal offense there. Last time I checked, which would have been 2 years ago, and I haven't heard that ordinance has changed. Manatee has left it as a civil infraction. So it's still